This is Pod Populi, podcast for the people. Welcome back to The Wedding Buzz. It's your host, Sydney, and today we're going to talk about one of the most important parts of the wedding day that is not talked about in the wedding planning process that often. So the wedding day, the point of the wedding day is you're making this big commitment. And the way that you make this big commitment is by saying vows. And we get so caught up in the flowers and the napkins and everything about the wedding day, the logistics of it and the decor and all of that, which is very important to make sure that you have a smooth day. But people, don't talk about the vows that often. I feel like it's kind of a last minute, oh yeah, what are we going to do about the vows? And I don't want you to skip over the vows. I want you to really think about it and make sure that it's something that you're going to be happy with long term, that it's meaningful and important to you. I personally, me and my husband wrote our own vows, and a lot of people are shy and they don't want to do that. And I get it. I do get it. But I will say, if you can get past it, like everyone in the audience there should be your family and friends who love you and care about you. And if you stutter on a word, they're not going to judge you. If they're going to judge you for that, they shouldn't be at your wedding. But if you can get past being shy and like the public speaking aspect of it, I really encourage you to write your own vows because it's really, really meaningful. On anniversaries and such, my husband and I get to play the video back and listen to our vows and hear not just the like, do you take this man? I do. Do you take this woman? I do. Like, hear what came from our hearts and like what we were feeling on that day. And you can just hear in our voices like how excited we were. My husband cried the whole time. He says he didn't, but it's literally on video. I am really happy that we did our own vows in our highlight reel that we got from our videographer. They made like a movie, and the way that they did it was so good. Like they had our vows, our voices, over top of some B-roll in the beginning. And it just makes such a big difference. And of course, I'm not telling you to write your own vows for the video aspect, but it's just meaningful. It's like something you can have. It's something you can look back on and really see how you were feeling that day, what was on your heart, and, make promises to each other that are personal, not just the like in sickness and health. Obviously that's important, but it's nice to make personal promises and personal commitments, and touch on your own story. So anyway, I highly suggest that you write your own vows. I will say, as a wedding planner, I am seeing less of this. I feel like a lot of people are like, ugh, I just want to get the ceremony over. I don't care about the ceremony. And I get it. The party is the exciting part. The party is where you have all the pretty picture. I mean, the ceremony can be gorgeous pictures as well, but people really feel like awkward and not like emotional and like, ew, the ceremony is like lovey-dovey. Ew, I don't want that. I'm not mushy, blah, blah, blah. And I just want to encourage you to not feel like that about your ceremony. I mean, that's the point of the day. It's really important. I'm like, marriage is not always easy. No one said it's going to be always easy. And I really value the words that you're saying to each other during the ceremony and the commitment that you're making. And I just encourage you to not devalue, the vows and the ceremony part of your wedding. And I want to encourage you to try to write your own vows. It doesn't have to be a novel. It doesn't have to be really long. But it is really special. I will say, if you're like, absolutely no way am I doing public speaking, some people write their own vows and then read it to each other during their first look or like a private moment of the day. And you can still have the videographer put microphones on you and get it recorded. That's kind of a sweet spot of doing your own vows. You're making these like promises and such. You can still get it on video and capture it so you can savor it for forever and look back on it. But you don't have to do the public speaking aspect of it. So there is a happy medium of still doing something personal. And I have convinced a few of my brides who are like not down for the public speaking, to do their own vows, but in a private moment. It's kind of a sweet spot. So anyway, I want to dive into, if you are going to do your own vows, some things that I suggest that you do, some things that I suggest you don't do. So let's dive in. So things that I think you should do when you're thinking about writing your vows. reflect on your relationship. I encourage you to think about your journey together. What milestones have you accomplished so far in your relationship? Growth moments. And what do you admire most about each other? I mean, I'm sure that if you're at the point where you're getting married, you've probably gone through a few months, at least a few years together. What have you done? What have you accomplished? I would reflect on that and start there when you're writing your vows. Also, don't sit down and be like, oh, I have to write this speech. Just start putting bullet points down of, oh, what are some big things that you did together? What are some things that stood out? I would talk to your partner. Like, I didn't want my husband to see the vows that I was writing prior to the wedding day, and vice versa. I didn't want to see his. I didn't want it to be like, you know, I, I wanted to hear them for the first time at the altar. But we did sit down and talk together about like a tone, like what is the tone, and make sure that you're on the same page. You definitely don't want one person to be like super duper silly and then the other person to be very emotional. I think a good blend of both is nice. You don't necessarily want to get up there and like sob the whole time, but you also don't want to make a joke out of it. This isn't SNL. It's your wedding, it doesn't have to be, it's not so serious. It's not sad, but it's also not like a joke. So I would sit down and talk about a tone together and make sure that you both are agreeing on this tone, on whether it's going to be heartfelt or silly or kind of a blend of both. I would also talk about the timing. That was a good way because I didn't want my vows to be 5-10 minutes long or whatever, and his vows were 30 seconds. That would be kind of awkward. So we decided on a time and we both practiced talking and timing ourselves. I believe we decided on like 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes ish. Again, it doesn't have to be a scripted, rehearsed like type of thing, but just so you're on the same page, I would talk about timing, making sure you both agree on the timing. And I would say keep it concise. 2-3 minutes is probably plenty. Getting into 5-10 minutes is quite a speech. You don't want to have to go on like too long. Your guests sit there and, I would say 2 to 3 minutes each person. That's a total of like 5 to 6 minutes of the vows. That's kind of a sweet spot in my opinion. I would suggest that you be authentic and personal. Again, talk about some memories that you've had together, some quirks that you have that can bring a little bit of fun, a little light into it. If everyone's like sobbing, you might want to lighten the mood of talking about some quirks or some funny stories that you guys have had. But the point of make sure that when you're thinking about what stories to tell, the point in the story, again, is not because this is a comedy show. The point in the story is that it shows the depth of your bond. It's the showing the connection between the two of you and how you ended up at this place, how you ended up at an altar. Why are you getting married? So I really like using storytelling. It keeps people engaged. It really helps show emotion and passion. But stories are a great way to add a little laugh in there. And also show the bond. For example, and again, not saying that I am an expert vow writer or anything. I just was a bride and am a wedding planner. So I have been in your shoes and I've been a bridesmaid. I've been a maid of honor. So I've seen it from the personal lens of my own wedding and my best friend and my sister. And then as a wedding planner, I see it from professional in the back of the room, but I see what people are going through. And you know what? I spend so much time talking to my brides and grooms and stuff that it feels personal for me then too. Like I get to know these people. I care about these people. I'm excited for their marriage. I'm excited about their relationship. So I do care. I probably care too much, but I really do care about this commitment that they're making to each other and want it to be special. So anyway, I was going to say, for example, in my own vows, something that I kind of joked about, but it really did show appreciation to my husband is I said something, I don't remember the exact words, but I have 3 cats and I had 2 rabbits. Now I have one of them passed away. But anyway, I have 3 cats and I had 2 rabbits when I got with my husband and when we got married. He's allergic to cats and rabbits, which I kind of am too, but that's a whole other story. But anyway, he's allergic to them. So to accept the fact that I have these 3 cats and 2 rabbits, like he's allergic to, shows like that he loves me. He's willing to put up with me. Another thing that I kind of touched on that was a little funny, but showed like a bond was my husband lived 2 hours away when we first met, and he drove to see me all the time. And with that, the joke in that is I kind of said, which it wasn't a joke, but it was kind of funny, is that he put over 30,000 miles on his truck in 1 year, just trying, like, coming back and forth to see me. He never once complained about it. He never once said, I'm tired, I don't want to come, or made me feel bad, made me feel guilty. Not once. He just said, I'm coming. And I was like, you don't have to, it's late. And so he was like, I'm coming. And that was it. And I appreciated that because that showed, his dedication towards me, but it also kind of lightened the mood when I was like, and you put 30,000 miles on your truck. Like, everybody laughed. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of miles. So anyway, that was just an example, again, in my opinion, not saying I'm an expert vow writer, but just how I kind of used something funny that would get everyone to like chuckle. But also it like showed the bond that we have by showing the dedication that like we have towards each other. And then the other thing that I would definitely just suggest that you do is practice, practice, practice. The more that you do it, the more comfortable you're going to feel. Rehearsing it out loud, I would definitely say it out loud, helps with the pacing, the clarity, and managing your emotions. I don't want to tell you to memorize word for word, because often when you try to memorize word for word, if you forget what word is next, then you sound like a robot and then you stutter and then it doesn't feel genuine. But if you write out bullet points and don't look at it ever again, when you get to the altar, you're going to stutter. And that's not what you want. And you're going to be so focused on what you're saying and nervous that it's not going to seem genuine. And so that's where I'm saying write out some pretty good bullet points to make sure that you have a nice flow. Honestly, it's similar to what I do in this podcast. Like on my computer screen that I'm looking at right now, I have bullet points of an outline of what I'm going to talk about, but it's not scripted word for word. So when I see the bullet point, I can then talk about it. And I spent time looking through this and thinking about it and planning it. So it's not my first time like looking at the notes, but it's not so scripted that I'm sitting here like a robot just reading off the screen. And then if I mess up one word, I'm frantic and lost. So I would suggest doing the same thing, because although it's all about your commitment and your vows, and the public speaking aspect of it doesn't matter. It's not a performance, but I will say practice the public speaking aspect of it so that you can focus on the moment, and not focus on how am I going to say this? What am I going to sound like? What's the next word? And so you don't get yourself into a spiral. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about some things not to do while writing your vows. Okay, welcome back. Let's dive into things not to do while writing your wedding vows, your ceremony vows. These are some mistakes that I want you to avoid. So avoid over complicating it. I feel like some couples try to like impress each other and impress the audience, and like, my vows are going to be better than your vows. And even though that's hopefully a joke, that's not the point. That's not the point of these vows. So don't try to impress the audience. Don't try to write the best vows that have ever been written. No, just write a letter to your partner. Honestly, ignore the fact that there's a whole crowd there, and just be genuine. Don't overcomplicate it. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Talk about, like I said before, some stories that you've had together. Talk about some appreciations that you guys have had for each other. Be authentic. Talk about some commitments. I didn't say this before, but definitely, talk about some commitments that you want to make towards each other. But don't overcomplicate it. I would suggest the next thing that I would suggest not to do is steer clear of inside jokes. I'm sure you all understand or have been around people that continue to say inside jokes with each other, and you're sitting there like, huh? Like it doesn't make sense. It's not funny if you don't know the inside joke. And the inside joke is funny for the people inside, but it's not funny for the people outside. And although your vows are for each other, I'm saying don't focus on the audience, but also maybe don't completely ignore that you have an audience. Like standing up there and just telling inside jokes where everyone's confused isn't really that funny. So I would just steer clear of some inside jokes, um, and try to make it kind of relatable in some way. I touched on this of making promises. I think that you should make promises to each other. What commitments? What are you going to commit? I mean, even this is another way that you can make it silly. I think my sister promised to watch like Gator football with her husband every Saturday as he screams at the TV. I think I promised to sometimes go fishing with my husband, which honestly, I haven't been keeping that promise up too well. I got to work on that. But that's something silly, but it's meaningful. Like my husband loves fishing. He wants to fish all the time. And so it was like a lighthearted part of my vows where I was like, and I promised, like, I promised to like be true and be loyal and stand by his side and all that. And then I kind of added something lighthearted. And I was like, and I promised to sometimes go fishing with you. And it's kind of a joke, but everyone understood because they all know that Bryce is my husband. Everyone knows that Bryce loves fishing and that I like fishing. I do like it. Don't love it, but I do like it. Grew up fishing. But that was like, honestly, something kind of serious for him. That's like his passion. So I wanted to mention it because I understand that it's his passion and I want to honor that. And, saying this out loud right now, I haven't been fishing with the boy in a long time. So I need to check myself. But this is part of why I'm like, write your own vows. It's so nice. And then look back on them. And honestly, it's like, you know what? When we were getting married, I really did think about this and I said this and he does love this and he loves when I join him and I want to do that for him. So, you know what? That's just a good reminder for myself right now. But so I suggest that you make promises, make things or say things that you can commit to, that you want to, beyond just sickness and health. And it doesn't have to be funny like fishing, but I promise to be loyal. I promise to honor you. I promise to respect you, whatever promises that you want to make. But also make sure that you're not writing promises you can't keep. I know I just said I wasn't doing great on the fishing, but it's not like I haven't gone. Make sure that you're not making promises that you can't keep. I think vows are really serious. I think that it's a commitment in front of everyone that you love. If you're religious, it's a commitment in front of God. I think it's a very serious thing. I think that you should take it seriously. And so just think about it before you go promise the world. Make sure that it's promises that you can keep because that's really important. You don't want to go back on a promise. And then the other thing that I really would avoid doing with your vows is last minute writing. I have seen brides fully in their dress, hair, makeup, like literally ready to go down the aisle. And they're like, wait a second, I need to scrabble my vows. Like, oh, I have some notes in my phone, but they're not written down. No, come on. Like I would suggest wherever you are in wedding planning, sit down, start doing some bullet points and maybe once a week, visit this bullet point list and kind of, mold it. It's like a pottery, with clay, kind of knead the dough a little bit. And then a week later, actually, this is a bad analogy because the clay would probably dry out. But anyway, every week, go back and kind of revisit it, mold it, shape it. And then I would say about like 2 weeks in advance, try to finalize it. What I did, again, not that I'm the expert vow writer, just what I did that I felt worked for me is that's what I did is I started with a bullet point list like months in advance. Every week we kind of revisit it, reshape it. If something funny happened or if something popped into my mind that like he did that was really sweet, I would just go in my notes app on my phone and like jot it down in there. And then like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the wedding, I really sat down and turned these notes into I don't want to call it a speech, but into kind of a speech and into my vows. But I kept it in the notes app on my phone. And then the morning of the wedding, I sat outside. We were staying at a beautiful property with a lake view. There's a balcony. I sat out on the balcony with my cup of coffee and I wrote my vows into the book. So I did wait until the day of the wedding, which is a little dicey but I did it like first thing in the morning, wanted some quiet time to do that. So that's up to you if you want to wait till the day of. I wanted it to just like feel really fresh, but make sure that you carve out time. Do not wait until you are dressed, hair, makeup, the chaos. No, do not wait that long. Um, do it at the very least in the morning. Don't procrastinate. Okay, so while you're writing your vows, let's talk about some structure of the actual vows. So I want to talk about the actual flow of writing your vows. We talked about like the pieces that go into the vows, but when you're actually structuring it out, I would start out with a statement about love or a memorable moment, one of those stories that you had together. And then I would share maybe some specific qualities that you love about your partner. So if you're looking at a blank paper and you're like, I still don't know where to start, I can think of some stories, but I don't know how to put this together. Just put some bullets. One, a statement about love in general, what it means to you, or a memorable moment between the two of you. Two, share some specific qualities that you love about your partner. Just what do you love about them? Why are you marrying him or her? What what is good about them? What do you find in them that's different than other people? Just write that down. And then later you can turn these into full sentences. Three, I feel like is a good point in your vows to start making your promises, your commitments, kind of open up about this is what is love, why are you together, a story about how you met, something like that. Qualities about that person, why you love this person, and then promises. What are you going to commit to? And then a conclusion might be your future. What do you want your future to be like? You've made these promises, and how does that translate into a future? And then I just encourage you to sit with it, go over it, do it again, practice, and make sure that it flows well. We're going to take another quick break, and we will be right back to talk about delivering your vows. We're going to go into the public speaking side of it a little bit. Okay, we are back. And now that you've written out your vows, you've edited them, you've molded them, you need to practice reading your vows. And so here are some speaking tips. Again, not that I am perfect, but I have taken a few public speaking courses. So do as I say, not as I do. So practice reading it out loud. I like reading it in front of a mirror. It's always a little frightening when you first try to do that and reading something out loud in front of a mirror because you are your worst like critiquer, but I suggest doing it. It'll make you feel more comfortable with the words. And it'll just help, break that ice, get you out of your shell. I would definitely want to remind you that it's okay to get emotional. It makes the moment feel more genuine. Maybe have a tissue handy. I'm not saying to force yourself to get up there and sob, but I also want to remind you and encourage you that it's okay if you do get emotional. It's okay. It's not weird. No one's there to judge you. And again, if they're sitting there judging you, they don't need to be there. So I would suggest to talk slow, allow yourself to have and feel emotion if needed. You don't need to rush through it. Talk at a normal pace. If you can, while you're doing it, hold each other's hands, look at each other. I know you're probably reading out of a book or something, but pause, look at each other in the face, in the eyes, and connect. I don't want you to feel like it's a robotic experience. I want you to feel like you're talking to that person. This is your partner, you're the person you're most comfortable with. So you should be able to deliver heartfelt vows to this person and not feel weird about getting emotional or just feeling anxious. So I would again just suggest speak slowly, speak clearly. You don't want to rush through your vows, which happens when nerves kick in. So talk slower than you think you need to, because I promise we talk fast in general, especially when there is an audience of people watching and we get nervous. We rush. So talk slow and steady. Don't be afraid of emotions. Just let it feel genuine. And it's going to be great. Don't overstress about it. Don't overstress. I would suggest starting early so that you can really make sure You get to say what you want, how you want it, that it flows well, practice it. And so then you'll feel good. And I don't want you to go up there feeling super anxious, like you have this public speech to do. I just want you to feel comfortable, know what you're going to say, and then let it flow in a genuine way. So, anyway, that is all that we have today. I just really was thinking about like the wedding planning and podcast topics that I hadn't necessarily touched on yet. And vows popped into my mind. I was like, this is a huge commitment, a huge part of the day, something that every wedding, I see people nervous about the vows. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. A lot of people aren't writing their own vows anymore. And I want to encourage you to write your own vows. I think people aren't just because they're nervous and they feel weird and emotions are embarrassing or whatever. And I want to encourage you not to feel that way, to, be honest, be genuine, not be ashamed of how you feel, and write vows that you can look back on and cherish for the rest of your marriage. It's important. So, anyway, I hope that this helped. I hope that you took away some tips of things to do, things not to do. Have fun with it. Don't over stress about it. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Make sure that you are following along. Check my business, Delightful Planning, out on Instagram. It's delightful_planning. I'm on TikTok as Delightful Planning. And my website is delightfulplanning.com. Make sure to follow along on the podcast. And if you need help with your wedding planning, I would love to help you guys. So feel free to reach out. My email, Sydney@delightfulplanning.com. And I can't wait to talk to you guys about your big day and see how I can help. Have a great day, guys.